Hello, you guys. So this is kind of an impromptu live. One of my patrons reached out to me. She watched my no social security number needed video and she had some questions. Some of these things I kind of touched on in the video, some of these things I didn't, but I wanted to give you guys an in-depth because I've had some other people ask me these questions. So I wanted to give you guys an in-depth um, idea along with showing you the documents, just like I did in that first video, of how you can go about the process of not having a social security number for your children, but them still getting a driver's license, them getting a bank account, them getting a cell phone contract, them purchasing, a home or getting a mortgage. So I didn't go into specifics about how to do this. So I'm going to do that tonight. So the first question that she had for me was, what about driver's licenses? Um, a lot of this information is going to be specific to New Jersey because the person that asked me these questions is from New Jersey, but it applies in your state too. So if you do not have, if your child, because most of you will, does not have a birth certificate or social security number, you can still get a driver's license and an ID. So I'm not going to get into the how to get a passport thing because if you watched my first video on this topic, I go into extreme detail about how to get a passport without a social security number. And I also go into great detail about how to work without a social security number. So I'm not going to reiterate those things. Go to that video. I provide all the sources. I show all the forms on the screen. So once you have done all of that, your child will have a passport. When they want a driver's license, they simply have to go and get a driver's license. They don't have to get a real ID driver's license. Right now, I don't think there is any state that does not offer two options, a regular driver's license and a real ID driver's license. So they can just go for the regular one. The second question was about a bank account. Now, I have to say that the bank account situation would be a little bit more complicated if you don't have a social security number. And this is where I'm going to share my screen actually. So in order to get a bank account, and I'm just going to share my whole screen because we're going to have to go back and forth. So in order to get a bank account when you don't have a social security number, you need to be able to have an EIN number. The problem with getting, I'm sorry, you're going to have to not just have an EIN, but you're also going to have to be able to go and get a business license from your state. In order to get a business license from your state, you need to have an EIN. Okay? So there are a few things that the bank is going to require because remember, if you don't have a social security number, you won't have a social security number to open up a bank account. So what you're going to have to do, and I talked about this in my first video, but I did not show you guys how to do it. So this video, I'm going to show you how to do it. You've got to go to the IRS and you have to get an EIN. Now, you might be saying, Irene, don't you need a social security number to get an EIN? Like, can I really go to the IRS without a social security number and get an EIN? And the answer is yes. Is a tax ID. Okay, a tax ID is just you cannot get a TIN without an EIN. So let me put that out there if that's what you mean. So in order to get a TIN, which is a tax identification number, versus an EIN, which is an employee identification number, know that an EIN is a type of TIN. A tax identification number is like a social security number. It's like, an EIN, an employer identification number, and things like that. So a TIN is just a tax identification number, and there's this umbrella. There's another one that doesn't apply here. That's for foreign citizens. They all fall under the same umbrella. To answer your question, that's a good question. I misunderstood, Gemini. So basically, the first thing that you're going to need to do is you're going to need to get an EIN. Now, the first thing I want you to remember is do not fill your EIN application out online. If you fill anything out with the IRS online, you're going to need a social security number to do any online services with the IRS. So the first thing is you have to print off these two forms. SS4, this is the actual application, and then the SS4 instruction form, okay? You're gonna need both. So when you fill out this form, I'm gonna try to blow this up because I want you to see it. When you fill out this form, in the beginning, it's going to say legal name, trade name. So when it says legal name of entity or individual for whom the EIN is being requested, on this, you are going to put your name, all right? Not because you're getting it for yourself as an individual, because you're actually going to call the legal name of your entity by your name. This is what I suggest, but you can also make something up, right? So if I were doing it, I would make my legal name Irene Yvette. Or you can just make up a name, Rose Cafe, or whatever you want to do. I say do it like Charles Schwab, right? Bristol Myers Squibb, how they all use their actual names. So there's lots of corporations we can think of that are named after a person. I would suggest naming your business after you. So if I were doing it, can I type in here? Let me see if it'll let me. Oh, no, it's not. Yes, can I? No, it won't let me. So if I could type in here for my legal name, I would put Irene Yvette. Where it says trade name of the business, if different from line 1, I'm not going to put anything because I want my business to carry my name, Irene Yvette, right? And then it says executor, administrator, or trustee of care of name, right? So when you go here, because I want you guys to understand the entire form and why we answer the questions the way that we answer them. Because remember, we're filling out this form without a social security number. All right. So we are currently on line 3, where it says executor, administrator, etc. Right? It says for trusts, enter the name of the trustee. For estates, enter the name of the executor, and so on and so forth. If the entity applying has a designated person to receive tax information, enter that person's name as the care of person, right? Enter the individual's first, middle, and last name, all right? So that's where you're going to also put your name. So maybe you might want to use your first and middle name for the legal name of the entity or your full name. And then you're also going to put your name under executor, administrator, trustee, care of, right? And then you're going to put your address. I would suggest that you get a PO box and put the PO box address, okay? You're going to leave street address blank because you're going to use a PO box and all of that. Then it comes down to name of responsible party. All right. Name of responsible party. That's what you're going to put there. And you're also going to put your name under name of responsible party. But you are not going to fill out line 7B where it says social security number, ITN, or EIN. Now you're probably like, Irene, if it says that I have to give my social security number, ITN, or EIN, why are you telling me not to do it? The reason I'm telling you not to do it is if you come down to the instructions, instructions are fundamental, of line 7A, 7B, which is right here. Remember, the purpose of us talking about this is how do you get an EIN without, because you're going to need your EIN to purchase property, to open a bank account. If you don't have a social security number, you're going to need your EIN for all of these things. So the conversation is, how do I get an EIN without a social security number, right? Legally. So if you go to line 7A, 7B instructions, it says name of responsible party. Enter the full name, first, middle, and last name, if applicable, and social security number, etc., right? Tax identification number of the entity's responsible party. But if you scroll down, right, it says, if you are applying for an EIN for a government entity, you may enter the EIN for the responsible party on line 7B. Otherwise, you must enter a SSN ITN on line 7B. But, and this is the part that's relevant to people without social security numbers, leave line 7B blank or enter not applicable, foreign or similar language if the responsible party doesn't have and is ineligible to obtain a social security number or ITN. Now, if you watched my first video and you went to the Social Security office for your child because you don't have a birth certificate, right? Or you didn't sign the paperwork at the hospital, so you don't have a valid birth certificate, all you need to have for your child is either the letter of no record. We talked about that in my first video. I gave detailed instructions on how to get it. Or you'll have the birth certificate that says like baby boy, baby girl, whatever, but it doesn't have your signature on it and it doesn't have a legal name on it. That birth certificate can be taken to the Social Security office. I talk about this in my last video, and they will give you a piece of paper that basically says we are not able to, issue a Social Security number due to an invalid birth certificate. That means that one way or another, either because your child has no birth certificate or because they have an invalid birth certificate because you never signed the paperwork at the hospital, and so it doesn't have a name on it, you didn't give them your child's name, you didn't sign the paperwork, they would be ineligible to obtain a Social Security number. In that case, you would leave this field blank. I would actually put not applicable in A, okay? So, and then I would suggest becoming an LLC. The problem with being an LLC is that you have to be very careful. You have to be very careful because if you look at line 8A, and if you want your child to be independent, maybe an LLC would not be a good idea. If you look at line 8A, you have to understand that an LLC, right, for federal tax purposes, it can either be treated as a partnership or a corporation. However, if your LLC only has one member, then the owner's going to have to include their income and expenses, or the LLC won't be considered separate from its owner, and all of its income and expenses will have to be on the owner's tax return, okay? Which requires a Social Security number. So if you choose LLC, this means that your LLC will have to have more than one member. Now, for your children, that second member could be you, but you're going to die eventually. So I would say just go straight with a corporation. I'm not a tax attorney. You could still choose to have, one member, but your LLC will have to file taxes, and a person without a Social Security number cannot file taxes. You can't. You must have a social security number or tax identification number to file taxes. If you don't have that, then you won't be able to file, right? So just keep that in mind if you decide to go as an LLC. If you don't have a social security number, you might as well, and this is what I would advise, is just file as a corporation, right? Just pick corporation under there. Now, how come I can click on that, but I can't actually fill out the form? Because I wanted to fill out this form to show you guys how it was done, but never mind. So, and then the rest of it, you just go ahead and you fill out as normal. All right. So after you've filled this out and you've mailed it to the IRS, I hope everybody's following me. After you've filled this out and you've mailed it to the IRS, then you will have an EIN. Now, if you don't have a social security number, this EIN now is sort of acting like a social security number for you. And that brings me to the other questions that this person was asking. How do I get a bank account, right? So let me show you how you're going to get a bank account. Before you go to the bank, you're then going to need to go to your state's website. So in this case, and maybe I'll just show you guys how I do it, right? So in the case of this person, let me share my screen. In the case of this person, they live in New Jersey, right? So I'm going to do New Jersey New Jersey business license requirements, right? If I'm in New Jersey and I'm going to go to the government's website, nobody else's, right? Because I want to do this as legally as possible. And I want the requirements. All right. So I'm going to go to their website and basically it says I need to obtain an EIN, which I just showed you how to do without a social security number. And that's it. I just need my EIN and I need to fill out the rest. So then I'm going to go, after I have my EIN, I need to get registered as a business in the state that I want my bank account. All right. And after I've done that, then I go to the bank itself, citizen. Let me repeat that. Now, what's crazy about that is, let me show you something. Legally, now this is a government website, consumerfinance.gov, okay? The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Can I get a checking account without a social security number? This was last reviewed August 19th, 2020. You are not required to have a social security number to open a checking or savings account. To open a checking or savings account, the bank or credit union will need to verify your name, date of birth, address, and ID number. An ID number can be a social security number or an individual taxpayer identification number. You will need to fill out the form with the Internal Revenue Service. If you don't have a U.S. government issued SSN or ITN, some banks and credit unions will accept a passport number and country of issuance, an alien identification card, or other government issued ID. Visit different banks and credit unions to find out what type of accounts they offer and what types of ID numbers they accept. This is what you're going to run into. I'm just going to shoot straight with you. The way I shot straight with you on my other live is the way I'm going to do it on this live. Technically speaking, a bank cannot turn you away for not having a social security number or an ITN. But you're going to have to shop around. Like, I wouldn't even try it with Bank of America. I'm just telling you straight up, don't even waste your time with B of A. But you definitely can probably find a credit union or a smaller bank. These are one of these questions where all I can do is tell you legally what your rights are, right? You legally have the right to obtain an employer identification number without a social security number. You legally have the right to use that EIN to then create a business in your state. You legally have the right to take all that documentation to a bank, and even though you don't have a social security number, open up a bank account. You legally have the right to go get a passport without a social security number if you do not already have one. So again, as I told you in my first video, this isn't really a conversation for many of us. This is a conversation about what we can do for our children, right? Okay, so I want to show you this too, actually. So, oh, you guys were watching it the whole time. Sorry, I didn't realize I hadn't stopped sharing my screen. So, according to the US Small Business Administration, these are the only documents any bank really has to ask for, no matter what the bank says. And this is why I said, like, some things you cannot force banks to do. So you really are better off going to a small bank because, like I said, super large banks like B of A, Wells Fargo, Chase are going to be very inflexible on this, even though they don't have to be. It literally says you just need your EIN, your business formation documents, the ownership agreement, and your business license. Now, remember what I said, or a social security number if you're a sole proprietorship. Remember, sole proprietorships, LLCs, stay away from that. Somebody's going to ask you for a social security number, right? Better just to go as a corporation. But these are really the only 4 things that they need. The thing about opening up a bank account without a social security number is you just have to find the right bank. And I wish that I could find a bank right now while we're online. I'm going to try to find one really quick, you guys. Where am I on time? Ooh, okay, let's see. Um, okay. Oh, maybe Chase would be a good one. Oh, maybe Chase Bank. Maybe I was wrong about Chase Bank. Huh. Go figure that. Well, maybe Chase is better than I thought. Okay, so Chase Bank is basically saying to open a business account, you need your EIN number 1. So you got that, right? And then it says requires proof of identification for both you and your business. Examples include a driver's license or passport, your business license or your partnership agreements. If you are a sole proprietor, you have to turn in your social security number. So stay away from that, right? If you are an LLC, you have to have the EIN and business registration. Again, it's this sole ownership. If you're the sole owner, your name should be listed as such. This is why I would stay away from sole proprietorships and LLCs, right? If you're a limited liability partnership, we didn't talk about this, but I think that a partnership is another good one, because if we go back to the form, which I can attach a link to them because they're downloaded. But if we go back to the form, you'll remember that partnership are one of the ones where you didn't have to provide a social security number on that IRS form application for an EIN, right? So on that SS4 form from the IRS, it was the one that you did not have to actually put a social security number for. And remember, when we're filling out that SS4, we're only doing the stuff that doesn't require a social security number. So yeah, it looks like I was hating on Chase Bank, but it looks like Chase Bank has more reasonable policies than Bank of America. They aren't requiring a social security number at all unless you are a sole proprietorship. But I think I have a sneaking suspicion if you go in as an LLC, again, I don't advise doing it. Not if you don't have a social security number, because eventually if you're the only sole owner of that LLC, it's going to end up being a problem. That's why I said I would just go with a corporation. But if you guys, if anybody experiments and does it with an LLC, let me know. I wouldn't advise it, but somebody might have better luck and say that I'm just being paranoid. So with that said, I'm happy to end on that note. I didn't think that realistically I would be able to easily, not with a large bank. I guess I'm eating, my own words on that, because I said Bank of America, Wells Fargo, no bank like that would I expect them to honor the fact that you don't need a social security number to open the account. A business account, all right? Now, a personal account, I think that's a whole nother, deck of cards, but a business account. And so actually, I'm pretty happy to say, I guess, go to Chase Bank, y'all. I'm going to tell the woman who asked me these questions that, because I would have just thought you had to field banks. I know where I bank, but I'm surprised that Chase does that. Very surprised. I might have to go and test that out and let you guys know how that works, right? Yeah. Anyway, so that worked out quite well. Oh, good morning, Rothy. Hi, Robbie. So with that said, I'm going to get out of here. I hope that this was useful. I figured that I would do it because she had asked me so many questions, and I thought in my last video, I really didn't walk you guys through. I said, just get your, tell your child to get a tax, an employer identification number. And I didn't really explain or show the documentation of how to get an EIN without a social security number. So now that I've done that, I feel satisfied. And now that we know for a fact that you can go to Chase Bank with that EIN and your, your business license paperwork and get an account open. I'm sure Chase is not the only one, but it's an example of one. Like I said, I would still go for a credit union or something like that, honestly. But if a large bank like Chase is doing it, then that's fine. We know don't go to Bank of America, because Bank of America sucks and they don't care if they want your social security number too. I'm pretty sure Wells Fargo is the same way in some of these other large banks. But the smaller banks, I think you'll have an easier time with that. I think they'll be more along the lines of what Chase is doing. So if you guys have any more questions on this, I literally get, sometimes I go months and I don't get anybody write me about this, but then just in the past 2 months, I feel like 3 people, possibly 4, but at least 3 people separately have reached out to me. And over the years since I've made that video, I constantly have people reaching out to me about that video who are having babies, and things like that, or who have children and they have questions. I mean, I had a girl once that reached out to me on this subject, opening a bank account. And she did not have the money to get a business license. And I wish I would have had this video back then. I wish I would have, this part of the video back then, because I think I left a lot of people hanging on my last video. And you know what? I might actually merge that video and this video and my third video I made on this topic together and just do one long, like 3-hour video, because then it would be easier for people to have all of the information just on one video from start to finish, from the time your child is born to the time they need a job, to the time they need a bank account, right? To the time they want to buy a house. So having all that information just on one long video so people don't have to navigate between 3 videos, I think would be much better. And I actually think I'm going to do that. I might do that this week and air that. And then when I air that, I will probably pull this video, because then it will all be in one place. And I'll think of some clever title for it. But nevertheless, I will talk to you guys later.